Hey, friendo, Steve here.
And Larson.
And welcome back to Going In Raw Special Edition Dark Side of the Ring Review Season 2 Finale. I really have enjoyed these. We should maybe think about doing Season 1 because we didn't review any of the Season 1s. We might have done like the first one.
I don't remember. No, the first one was the Macho Man one.
I don't remember. I didn't see that one. I thought there was one that I think I did see. I don't think I watched most of those.
We watched the Montreal Screwjob one.
Yes.
I saw that one. I saw the Bruiser Brody one's really good. I watched that.
I did not see that one.
And then I started watching the one on Gino.
I think I saw some of that.
Yeah, I saw the Von Erichs one too, I think.
Man, I don't know what I was doing. Anyways, so of course, this is the episode about the tragic death of Owen Hart. It focused very much on his family. And this was obviously pretty tough to watch. I've told this story before, but for people who might not have heard it, obviously you and I were big wrestling fans at the time when this was happening in 1999. You, me, and Jeff lived in an apartment together. And my girlfriend at the time had one of those cable boxes, the illegal, you could just record whatever you want. Those coppers will never tell me, ask me, get that name out of me because she was cool. Anyways, so we got home. We were doing something, which was weird because we never did anything. But we were out and about, and we came back and got on. Back then, you'd get on the AOL chat rooms to find out what was going on at a given pay-per-view.
Spoilers, yeah.
And so there was like the AOL created chat rooms, but then there was like the user created chat rooms, and every single one of those was labeled "Owen is dead," and it was like, what the hell? And so we went in there, we're like, oh my god, this is crazy. And then like I immediately called Amber. I was like, dude, give me that. I need that tape. And so I went and got it from her. We popped it in, and sure enough, like we had seen this. And it was the most surreal, bizarre, crazy thing. And then, of course, we saw the subsequent tribute Raw show. And obviously, this is one of those, core wrestling memories has been burned into our psyches. So reliving it didn't like, just because we had seen it before, it didn't make it any less.
I haven't seen anything from Over the Edge 99 since the day we watched that VHS tape 20 plus years ago. Because I remember watching at the time and just being the weight of what happened and the immediate impact was just all over JR and especially Lawler's face.
Yeah,
never forget that.
I'll always remember watching Jeff Jarrett's promo right afterwards, and it was like, what? This is off the rails right now. Yeah, it was crazy. I think so. In terms of takeaways, I've always been up until this documentary, I had been kind of on the fence about the decision of Vince McMahon to keep the show going. At this point, after having seen that, there is not a doubt in my mind that they effed up. They shouldn't. There's no chance they should have kept that show going. And I think like the main thing is simply, why in the world didn't the cops come in and shut it down? A guy fell to his death. There's a blood stain and like part of the ring is broken, and they're still going. They're still doing this. It seemed like literally potentially a crime scene.
Yeah.
And the fact that go ahead.
No, I was going to say, if for no other reason, and there's several reasons why you stop the show, but for no other reason, as you mentioned, it's potentially a crime scene. There's potential forensic evidence that could be altered, destroyed, by having the show continue. And if you want to get a quality, thorough investigation, what happens, you shut the show down. That's just one reason. There's several others, like all the wrestlers backstage, all the agents, all the producers. That's someone they know, a friend of, who fell to their death from 80-something feet and died in front of all of them. And you expect, it's easy to point out Jeff Jarrett because he had to do a promo right afterwards, and he was really close with Owen. Owen was apparently really well liked backstage.
Yeah, loved by everybody.
I'm sure he was friends with a lot of people. To make all those guys and women go out there and perform after that just happened is awful. It's awful.
You would have to suppose that there is a level of humanity in Vince, in how he views his business. And I think that's the thing about Vince, is that, you know, we've heard even just recently from like Luke Harper that Vince McMahon, you can talk to him on a phone and he, you know, appears human-like. And, you know, he's like a normal person. We've seen in the Undertaker documentary, which who knows how much of that is like sort of Vince fabricating something for emotions for the screen. I don't know. But even that emotion might come more from the business aspect of things. The man has no humanity when it comes to the business aspect of wrestling. He doesn't. There time and time again, he views wrestlers as, you know, commodities, basically. And so, I mean, I think, and so what you're saying is, yes, absolutely. Out of respect for the people who know Owen, who love Owen, to expect them to go out there and you see this blood stain and the ring is all busted up and then they still have to do their jobs. That's horrible. That's horrible.
It's awful. It's awful.
I mean, that to me would have to supersede. Another thing that really sort of, we saw it happen. We've lived with it for 20 plus years. But when JR, and everybody was talking about this, when JR was describing how Kevin Dunn relayed the information to JR, because JR was like, hey, we don't have an update. And he's like, hey, you need to give the people an update. He's like, I don't have an update. Owen's dead and you're back in 10 seconds.
Not only that, he said you're back in 10. He started counting him down.
He started counting him down, which is even more pressure.
9. Yeah.
The idea that update came, could you imagine? I mean, that's one thing we didn't do. We weren't sitting there live during the pay-per-view. You know, we saw it on tape afterwards. Could you imagine sitting there live and that's how we get our update? Like, I mean, if you're going to have the show go on, okay, I guess. But then to have JR say, hey, we're going to update you, everybody. Owen's dead. That is the weirdest thing. Like, what a weird decision to make. Like, you wouldn't wait for a press conference afterwards?
I know.
Like, you wouldn't have JR say something like, hey, everybody, we're going to come
give that update. You get Vince out there.
Yeah.
You get Vince out there. You put him in the ring. You put a mic in his hand. And he's the one that delivers that news. If you're going to do it live on air, what you do is he comes out and says, all right, we just had a tragic thing happen here. Sadly, Owen Hart has passed away. Because of this, we're going to stop the show. This is what Vince should have said. We're going to stop the show. You know, there's an adage in show business: the show must go on. However, human life supersedes that. Therefore, out of respect to Owen, his family, all the men and women in the back, we're not going to do that. You know, safe travel back home, everybody in the crowd. That's what he should have done. That's what he should have done.
I agree with that.
Kevin Dunn tell JR, oh, you got to update people. What's the update? He's dead. 10, 9, 8.
Yeah. It's crazy.
Like JR, he's got to prepare himself emotionally. Like he hears that news, and to come up with an announcement that I mean, because like he seemingly kind of apologizes for the way he made the announcement and says, well, I had 10 seconds to think of something to say, and that's what I said. Because it's very matter of fact. His announcement saying Owen Hart, he fell to his death, and there's your update. Essentially is what it was. And Lawler looks like he's on the verge of just sobbing.
No, that's one thing I'll never forget also. And it's funny because like the network version of it is just a really weird edit. Like, you know, they chop out all that stuff, but and I haven't really gone back and listened to like the details of like, okay, what was like 3 matches later, what was their demeanor like? It probably was. I do like the one thing I remember is somebody bringing up. So I guess it was the next match. Jeff Jarrett, I think, went on next, and somebody had mentioned like JR just trying to get back into the spirit of things. I think. Tried to mention, because, you know, obviously back then King was big into talking about puppies, his euphemism for boobs. And I think JR threw Lawler like a softball to say something like that to get him back in the spirit. And Lawler just said, yeah, those puppies are something else. Like it was dark. It was like messed up. Let me ask you this.
All right.
Because this is another sort of takeaway from the entire thing. Owen's family comes off amazing here. Owen's wife, widow, a doctor. They've raised, I think, $4 million is what the number that I heard.
All right.
For the Owen Hart Foundation, which then I found out was they gave scholarships to college scholarships to people in the area who couldn't afford to go to college. They put people in homes who couldn't afford homes. All sorts of great stuff. You mentioned this off camera. His son was he interviewed extensively in this. He comes off. I mean, he's a lawyer. He comes off as a very impressive person.
Yeah.
This is a smart family.
Yes.
Obviously, at this point, I think you and I are both of the opinion that, and I've always been of this opinion that Owen, there's no way that she would let Owen, and there's really no reason for her to, because this company was horribly negligent in killing him. Why wouldn't the Hart family have stuck by Martha Hart? It's from her point of view, she has said that the main sticking point, like Brett was basically on her side until he started saying, hey, as part of your settlement with the WWE,
I want my footage.
I want my wrestling footage. And she was like, this isn't about that. And then he broke with her. And I understand that there's sides to every story, but just the fact that he went back and worked at 26 or whatever and had a whole thing with the WWE. I don't know, man. It just doesn't look great. I'm not sure. It doesn't look great, you know?
Yeah, I don't know. You know, the Hart family as a whole has had a long-standing relationship with Vince McMahon. You know, going back a long ways. So without knowing the exact ins and outs, the dynamic of that relationship between Stu and Vince, and obviously Brett has a very complicated relationship with Vince McMahon. You know, and I was at Cornette, I think, in this says something along the lines of, you know, this happened, but for try to find an accurate way to paraphrase, essentially, for this family who's had such a long connection with Vince McMahon, for them to upset the most powerful man in the industry they're in, maybe they felt it wasn't in their collective best interest to do that.
And again, I'm not in this situation. I'm not, you know, this is obviously a very, like you said, a very complex thing.
It is, and you know, it's one of those situations that it's probably not wise to speculate.
Yeah, you're right.
You know, but you know, you wonder why. You know, I think it's fair to wonder. You know, the Owen passed away. His widow is you know, looking for her day of reckoning. You would think, at least as family members of Owen, you would at the least quietly give her support. You don't do anything publicly. Just not get in the way. You think. Some
of the things I was looking up, some of the things that Brett said about her were just tacky, just sort of classless, and it's a bummer. It's you know, it's like, man, what a drag. Because she comes off as very impressive in this, and as does her entire family. And I'd like to think that if you know, if Lacey's employer was negligent in her death, if that ever happened, God, I hope it doesn't. You know, I would be as vigilant as she was in trying to find this. That takes, to take on the WWE, to come up with the lawyers, to try to do, to, you know, because the WWE, they're known, if they get sued, they will tie you up in court. And they have the resources to do that. That is not an easy task.
Is that she sued and then they countersued her.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So, like, I don't know. It's a brave person, and I think it's somebody who it seems like it would have been the easiest thing in the world to and nobody and completely justifiable to say, this is too big of a task. This is too hard. I'm not going to win. I'm not going to it's too much for one person to go through this and to fight this fight. And she did it. And I mean, a total inspiration, obviously to her kids, but just in general, like, God, that's what an inspiring figure she is.
Yeah.
Totally. Of course, you know, the actual incident itself, it's absolutely crazy that, you know, that one little clip, a lot of people on Twitter, when they saw this, they saw that little tiny clip that with 6 pounds of pressure, will unleash. I was reading the newsletter, Dave Meltzer's take on it, and he was listing a lot of the stuff that was known, and that apparently the thing that actually released it, according to one account, according to the guy that was up there with Owen, was simply Owen inhaling. It was either inhaling or exhaling. Yeah. So I think according to Martha, I think maybe it's in her book, the harness was restricting his breathing.
Yeah.
And so he was trying to breathe, and then the guy on the catwalk, or on the whatever, the catwalk.
Yeah.
Catwalk, heard the little ding, and then he was gone.
Oh my God.
That's horrifying. That's
horrible.
Absolutely horrifying. And there was no redundancy, obviously. But like in any stunt like this, there would be a redundancy.
Yeah. And then they mentioned the previous stunts they had done where it was a different type of mechanism that was being used that was locking. And it was meant for those type of things. However, the thing that they were using for this was something that was used on boats.
Yeah.
And the reason was I guess they didn't want Owen fumbling around or whatever for an extra few seconds to release himself from the apparatus to start the match. They wanted something, that's near instantaneous, that you just flip a switch or push a button, and he's free from the cable itself.
Yeah. What's telling is that JR says this is the worst moment I've ever experienced in wrestling, and he says maybe even my life. Now I'm almost positive this was filmed after the death of his own wife, which tells you sort of the magnitude of the senselessness that I think he feels that this had. I mean, his wife died tragically by being hit by a car, which, while not an occurrence that everybody's been through, it's not an uncommon occurrence for a car accident to happen. And maybe I wonder if that was what he was getting at. Obviously, he's experienced some really deep tragedy and fairly recently. But I just wonder if part of his point that he was making there was this was totally preventable.
Yeah, and that was kind of the general consensus from basically everybody that they spoke to was this didn't have to happen. This was completely preventable.
Yeah.
And in one sense, it was the mechanism they used to lower him this time, but also a man of his talents, of Owen Hart's talents, should have been doing that kind of stuff to begin with.
Yeah.
And I think both JR really went in great detail about how at that point in the Attitude Era, people who were really good wrestlers who maybe couldn't do the more outlandish or didn't feel comfortable doing the more outlandish character stuff that was being asked of them were essentially on the pay no mind list.
Yeah.
And if you weren't in a position to go out there and do, be in over the top storylines or potentially portray these over the top characters, then you kind of didn't get much. And so back to the Blue Blazer for Owen Hart, and they kind of laid it out where it was him being lowered from the rafters was kind of a spoof on Sting doing the same thing.
Yeah.
WCW. Which
He also makes
2 years prior.
He also makes a really good point in that if you look at who came in just the 2 years after, 3 years afterwards, you have all four guys from WCW.
Was it Jericho that made the point?
Oh, was it Jericho or JR? Well, yeah. No, you're right. It was Jericho. You're right. So you had, Jericho had just come in, and then
he come in August of that year, yeah.
He came in August of '99. Okay, so you got Jericho, you got Benoit, Guerrero, Malenko, Perry Saturn. You've got Kurt Guerrero. You've got Kurt Angle. That's
he mentions Edge and Christian as well.
Yeah, that's right.
Company, but they were a tag team,
That's right. Yeah, all sorts of people who and I don't know. I think it's a really solid point. I don't remember at that time. I'm trying to remember if anybody in '99 was. I guess that's a really good point, actually. Like, who else was known for their wrestling back then? Prior to those WCW guys coming in. Really,
that's a weird in between moment, where they were getting away because, in the mid '90s. There was a lot of great wrestlers in WWF.
Yeah, you had Brett, you had Shawn. They were both gone.
Yeah. And then, they were gone. A lot of people went to WCW. And then eventually when they started coming, some of the WCW guys started coming over, it seemed like end of Attitude Era, more so, I think, Ruthless Aggression era is when they're like, okay, maybe we can actually find a way to have some crossover between more outlandish stuff that we're doing and then actually showcase some really good wrestling.
And I wonder, I wonder if Owen, like, I remember, so 99, I had been watching at that point for probably 2 years because I started watching when I was hanging out with you guys in 97. And so, but I wasn't really, I started watching WWE though, because we were watching like a lot of WCW. I started watching WWE after Mania 98. And that's around the time, Brett was already gone. I think Owen had joined the Nation. And so he was just sort of this dude who was floating around. I didn't really know about Owen's like wrestling skills until a lot later because I just wasn't exposed to it. And at that point, I wasn't like digging back. I could have watched some tapes maybe from like the mid 90s, but I wasn't really 90s, doing that.
Yeah.
So like, I only knew Owen as the sort of semi-comedy act. That's how I knew him. I knew him as the guy running around screaming, "I am not a nugget," in the Nation, which is weird.
Enough, and it's time for a change.
Yeah, that stuff. And then, and then he was the Blue Blazer, and that's how I knew him. I didn't know that he was like this really, really good wrestler.
When I was getting back into it, it was around the time that Bret Hart and Stone Cold were in the midst of their feud. So that's when Owen was part of the second iteration of the Hart Foundation. He always had his Flambies with them, that kind of stuff. And I remember a little bit of the stuff like when he first showed up in WWF when I was still kind of off and on watching in the early 90s. But yeah, I mean, you go back and watch some of the stuff he was doing in Stampede, stuff he was doing in Japan. It's off the charts, man.
Oh, yeah.
Some of the stuff they showed, especially in Stampede, that bit where he jumped off to the back flip off the guy's shoulders and stuff, that was crazy.
Yeah. Another thing that was pointed out here, which I thought was interesting and seemingly a stark contrast with like the rest of his family, was the idea that Owen was basically, if they are to be believed, his family is to be believed, saving up to get out. He loved spending time with his family. That's what he liked to do. He viewed wrestling as that thing that he's going to do. He's going to save as much money as he can. He lives frugally, and frugal. And he's going to get out and be with his family, which obviously makes this all the more tragic. But it also makes it quite a bit different than somebody like, for example, Bret Hart, who, if it wasn't for Goldberg kicking him in the head, he probably would be still wrestling as much as he can.
Probably.
So that was kind of interesting.
Yeah. And the whole thing culminates, the episode does, in the question about should Owen be in the WWE Hall of Fame? And, you look at his resume based on that, absolutely deserving.
Yeah, of course.
Absolutely deserving. The final say comes down to Martha. And given her perspective, given her son's perspective, their daughter's perspective, it makes all the sense in the world why they would not want him in that. But there's that hey, this is the company that, due to their negligence, took our father, my husband, away from me. But also the fact that they have Owen's Foundation, which is, allows his name to live on and help people.
Yeah.
And their family thinks that is a more fitting legacy to honor his name than anything WWE could provide.
I mean, you and I both consider the Hall of Fame as it's just the silliest thing anyways. Yeah, it's some of the names in there. It's like, every year they have some filler names, and it's like, and that's within the context of, like, when I think of a Hall of Fame career, like if you look at all the other like actual professional sports, the criteria is pretty hardcore. You know what I mean? Like, you have to be one of the greats to get into, like, for example, the NBA or the basketball Hall of Fame.
The thing is that every other Hall of Fame, there's a voting body.
Yeah.
You have to achieve a certain percentage of the vote to get in. In some Hall of Fame, I believe, like the football, they have a couple rounds where there's a list of semifinalists of 20 or so, and I think every year 5 or 7 get in. Major League Baseball, there's some years where like there's one person that gets in because no one else gets 75% of the vote.
Yeah.
WWE Hall of Fame is all up to the whims of one man. Mm-hmm. And if you're in Vince's good graces and he likes you and thinks having you on the broadcast to give a speech will draw viewership, he'll induct you into the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's all just a sham. And so like nobody ever actually tunes into the Hall of Fame and like is like, oh wow, what an honor. This is great. They deserve it. So yeah. Anyways, no, I take no issue with that whatsoever. I mean, it's like it would be so, I don't know, it'd be like peeing on his name if they actually did let him do that, you know. Mm-hmm. And Brett's point is, you know, well, a lot of people should know his name, you know, and what he did. I'd love to sit down with his kids and let them know what kind of person their dad is. I'm pretty sure their mom knows and has told them what kind of person their dad was.
And if Martha and her and Owen's children think that the best way to preserve and advance Owen's legacy is through this foundation, then more power to him.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
More power to him.
Yeah. No,
you know,
I
mean,
totally.
and if you want to talk about Owen the wrestler, then just talk about Owen the wrestler. He doesn't need to go in the Hall of Fame to do that.
Yeah.
Just talk about Owen the wrestler.
Yeah. Again, this episode sort of, it's funny because they're never super overt about it, but every episode Vince is the background villain, and every episode Vince has one little moment where you see what a piece of shit he can be. And
he's snapping at that reporter, man.
Yeah. I don't appreciate your sarcasm, lady. Lady? Who says lady to a person? And you're talking about a dude's death. Yes, you should be wanting to know what happened. Not just, he's got to be the most... Oh, my God. It's infuriating, man.
It really is.
Like, I saw this and I started thinking about him crying at the Undertaker thing, and I'm like, you fake piece of shit. What does Undertaker mean to you personally? I can't. Stop, please, no, stop. Get out of here with that. Anyways, that's it for Dark Side of the Ring. Who's up to... I'm going to watch some more WWE tonight, by the way.
Oh, yeah. SmackDown tonight.
It's a funny thing, though, man. It's like, you know, Vince McMahon, he's such a damn crook. But it's like, I don't let that... There is an element with me personally, like, we got to compartmentalize, as you like to say. It's like, you know, but yeah, Vince McMahon is seemingly subhuman, but I really enjoy pro wrestling, and I like to think that pro wrestling is so much more than him, even though sometimes it seems like it's not.
Well, in his mind, that's definitely not the case.
Right. True.
Here's the thing: is as much as I find some of Vince's actions and decisions questionable, there's a lot of really good performers and seemingly a lot of really good people under his employ.
True.
And while at times it pains me to support WWE because of Vince, knowing that in my mind, at least I can do the mental gymnastics to make this seem the case. I am watching not to support Vince. I am watching to support the men and women who are out there working, putting on amazing matches to entertain us. So I will support the wrestlers and not have to give a damn about what's going on in the executive office. To an extent. I mean, if they pull some really shady stuff, then it's going to take some soul searching on my part. But by and large, on a day-to-day basis, I don't watch WWE because I think Vince is great. He's not. He seems like a real turd a lot of the time. There's a lot of really good wrestlers and seemingly a lot of really good people working for WWE, and I can support the company because of that, because I want to support them, the men and women who are out there putting their bodies on the line each and every day, each and every week to entertain us. They're worthy of our support, even though Vince is not.
Well, you're one of the most morally pure people I know. So if it's good enough for you, it's good enough for me.
Well, it's not to say that I there's times when they'll announce something. I'm like, oh gosh, really? I got to deal. This is like something internally I got to deal with now.
Yeah, I know.
To feel comfortable watching their product. And we've seen numerous people through various events who have taken to social media to say, all right, that's it, canceling the account, their network account. And can't blame them.
No.
Can't blame them at all. Absolutely. If I didn't do this for a living, there probably has been a couple circumstances where I would have been entertaining that similar decision.
With me, it was mainly just the Saudi deal. Like, that's like the other stuff. Like, I don't like booking stuff. I don't care about. It's like, whatever.
It has nothing to do with booking stuff. It's all the business stuff.
Sure.
Like the Saudi arrangement, that kind of stuff. Yeah. I mean, there's certain things here and there where I'll see or read something about it. I'm like, oh gosh.
Mm-hmm.
It just feels like bad business.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yet Vince convinced himself it's the right thing to do. And as a wrestling fan and someone who enjoys the product, enjoys a lot of performers that work for WWE, it's a bummer that we as fans have to deal with Vince's boneheaded business decisions and questionable morals to be entertained by the performers who are really what we're tuning in to watch.
Yeah. Yep. No, I agree with all that. Anyways, let us know what you guys think in the comments below. Give us some of your favorite Owen Hart moments. How about that?
Yes.
Let's celebrate the guy.
Absolutely.
By the way, if anybody's interested in something that's a bit more in depth in terms of the event surrounding John Pollock over there at Post
Wrestling, yeah.
God, it was maybe it was about a year ago. But they have and I'm sure they probably retweeted it on their Twitters recently because of this episode.
Recently, yeah.
But they did a really terrific audio podcast or audio sort of report on the entire thing. So be sure to check that out. It's a really terrific listen. There's a lot more. It goes a lot more in depth in terms of like the mechanisms used and stuff like that. So check that out. Anyways, thanks everybody for tuning in. We appreciate it. Until next time, we'll talk to you later.
Goodbye.